guys, my name is April Heda, and I'm doing the presentation on Edward Scissorhands. The first question: What does the movie? When does the movie first hook me, and why? I believe the oddness of the movie is really reminds me of Stepford Wives. When I first watched it, it kind of grabbed my interest, but what really grabbed my interest was when Peg went and picked up Edward Scissorhands. When she went to the door, when she went to try to sell her Avon stuff, and she came across this mansion. You see this town, so to speak. It's almost like cookie cutter houses. Everyone's doing the exact same things, and then way on the far left side, you see this mansion. It's dark and kind of creepy looking. And right when the camera kind of switched it to that angle, it just grabbed my interest because you know something really good is about to happen. I think it showed a lot of obscurity. It made you question, like, what does this mansion have to do with the movie? Kind of intrigued you. It's like, okay, what's going to happen next? And I think that that really captured the audience, and especially me, to see what's going to happen next. And it was like, okay, it's kind of odd because you see all these nice houses and then this weird, creepy, dark mansion. So that's when the movie first hooked me. The second question is, what is the message of the movie, and do I agree or disagree? I believe the message is simple, and it's that as a culture, we're quick to judge and dismiss that is different. In the movie Edward Scissorhands, it is very extreme. I mean, that's I think that the director really wants to prove a point to show from what it is to be normal, or so to speak normal, and have something different. He went extreme with it, with how all the housewives were in the house gossiping, and the house are very cookie cutter, and all the husbands left at work at a certain time. It was very odd and creepy of how they did everything exactly the same. And here comes Edward Scissorhands, just different, and with their reaction towards it. And I think he really wanted to be bold in his message of showing up as a culture of how we see something different and how we react to it. So I think that was the message of the movie. And the third question is, what is Edward's main desire compared to the desires of Frankenstein? Well, I believe Edward didn't say much in the beginning of the movie, but by body language and his willingness, I believe he wanted to be loved and be part, because he would always look down at this town that he stood in this mansion that he never went out of. I mean, I don't think he really knew what to do when his creator died. And he saw this town, and I think he always longed to be part of it. So I think his desire was to be human and to be like others that he sees in this town. It's very similar to Frankenstein, because Frankenstein wanted to be loved and accepted, mostly by his creator, but also to the village around him and the community around him. I feel like Frankenstein was a little bit more extreme. Maybe perhaps it was because it was a book and I was reading, it could be the verbiage in the book, but I really feel like they're similar in their desires, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be loved. I mean, they were created for whatever reason, companionship or whatever it might be, but they wanted to have that companionship and that love. And I think that's something that they both had in common, and that was both their desires, was to be like human, to be like what they see others in the village or in the community. Consider or explain how, number 4, explain how Edward's response to the environment and how does it compare. Okay, we already did that one. Number 5, consider Jim and Joyce's, the two villains. How did they treat Edward, and how do these villains compare to the villains in Frankenstein? Well, Jim really treated Edward kind of as a joke, and kind of like made fun of him, and would kind of like mess around with him and mess with him. And eventually he does scheme up a plan to try to convince Kim to convince Edward to commit a crime. He sees his innocence and his willingness and his kind heart to do things, so he wanted him to commit a crime, and for his benefit, for Jim's benefit. They play because he's taking advantage of something that's so innocent, like Edward, that's willing to, doesn't know much of how to act, and he sees his innocence and takes advantage of that. And Joyce as well as too. Joyce was very pushy and aggressive. She didn't accept no for an answer. She was really weird in the movie. She came on to Edward, which was really odd, and it seems like once she couldn't get him, she kind of came against him and was like looking to see what she can bring about him trouble or whatever it may be. Well, towards the end of the movie, she's trying to find, to convict him of whatever kind of crime and all that. And I think they caused a lot of trouble for him. As far as, Jim, he almost got arrested. Jim almost had Edward arrested. And Joyce is just like a troublemaker. She tried to come on to him, and when he didn't want that, she just kind of freaked out and was like now out to get him in a sense, to paint him as this villain. Number 6, the two main characters. So discuss the importance of two relationships between two characters. And the two characters I chose were Edward and Peg. And how does it contribute to the story? I feel like it contributes greatly into the story because Peg really took Edward and took her under her wing, almost like if it was her son, and nurtured him and loved him and taught him how to be like them, like humans, so to speak, and loved him. Versus in Frankenstein, he never really had that. And I feel like if Edward did not have Peg and he just went out into society, then he would be in a lot of similar trouble as Frankenstein did. I think that Peg really helped mold and shape him into the man that he kind of became to be, kind and loving. I mean, I believe he always had that inside, but when he had his scissor hands, he didn't know how to act or dress, and sort of things that Peg kind of mothered him and taught and showed him how to be, which laid out in the movie of how she nurtured him and what that did for him, and the community accepted him. Seven, the last question. What is the director saying about humanity, good and bad, compared to Mary Shelley's view? I believe that what it's saying about humanity, the good part is that as humans, we are sensitive to emotions and feelings that allow us to relate to things emotionally. To an animal, we see an animal hurting and we can relate to that. We're not like them and we can't talk to them necessarily, but we can relate to it. And I think that because of that, we're able to relate with emotions or feelings and connect with them in that way. The bad part of humanity is that conformity and the struggle that radiates through the film. When Peg brings home Edward, she sees him and she sees the society and humanity, and she sees the people around him, how they are, and right away she tries to change him by putting on cleaner clothes, trying to cover up his scars, and trying to get him to not act as himself, trying to get him to act like how everyone else is. I think the director did a really good job at how he created, the community is everyone's almost like a Stepford wife there, and everyone's exactly the same, just different, different color houses, and the men all left at the same time. I think he really wanted to make a point, like everyone's so used to conformity that anything that was not exactly like them was like dangerous to them, and they were afraid. And I think the main point was to show that, just because something's a little different, that doesn't mean it's dangerous or bad, and I think he really wanted to show that in the film in a more blunt way. I think even Edward showed humanity in the movie, because when he was like making all these sculptures and trimming these trees, I think it showed his inner beauty that he had inside. He didn't really speak much or say much, but I think it really showed his beauty that he had within inside his soul. And I think that was a really important part, because it just showed, who he was inside and the beauty he sees. And I think the others were able to relate to that, and that's how they started like, wow, can you cut my hair? Because they thought everything he touched was like a masterpiece and it was so beautiful, so they were able to relate to him. Again, the simple message of the story as a culture, we're quick to judge and dismiss things that are different. Again, the director did an amazing job. He was very extreme in showing how cookie cutter the society is, and then here comes Edward. But I think that he's showing that that's how our society is. We see something and right away we, think it's dangerous, or we can't relate, and we kind of freak out, and that's not necessarily true. And then we can be a little bit more accepting, of people that don't look exactly like this, or dress like this, or talk like this, but that we can find what can we relate to one another. And that's going to wrap up our whole presentation on Edward Scissorhands. Thank you.